Hello again, class. I'm going to be working in the textbook and workbook today with you on understanding volume. So your textbook should be on page 285. We're going to go at a decent pace. So as always, feel free to pause and spend more time on any page that you would like. But we're going to go through 14.5 and 6 and then look at what your practice is in the workbook for today. So understanding and measuring volume. The first page gets you thinking about the fact that volume is about space, right? We talked about how volume is a measure of the amount of space something occupies. So the watermelon clearly has a larger volume than the orange because it takes up more space. It's not about how much it weighs. It's a three-dimensional figure, and it's about space, and it's cubic units. So just like for circles, we measure them in square units. Even spheres, we're looking at the number of cubic units that are in that three-dimensional figure. There are specific units, which we're going to look at next week, that we use in cooking and things like that, that are for volume also and are related to the number of cubic units. Page 286 gets you comparing some objects and recognizing that the larger ones have the greater volume. Nothing surprising there. 287 gets you counting cubes, which you guys worked on yesterday. More counting cubes. We talked about the fact that you want to group them. So like the first layer, or the top layer, has 16 cubes, and there are 4 layers. So one way to figure out how many total cubes there are is to multiply 4 times 16 to get 64 total cubic units. And then we have some unusual shapes where we're counting cubes. All right, and that's about it for that lesson. We then get into 14.6, volume of rectangular prisms and liquid. So we started to look at this a little bit yesterday and understand that we need to be able to measure the length and the width and the height of prisms, and that can help us to find the volume. So some of you were unsure as to which one is the length, which one's the height, which one's the width. In general, length is the side to side, how long it is from side to side. Height makes sense that it's how far up and down it is, how tall something is. And then width is sometimes called depth when you're thinking of a three-dimensional figure. So in this case, the 4 would be the width, the 6 is the length, and the 5 is the height. All right, a few more of those. And then it gets you to recognize that volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. I do want you to understand that the real formula for volume of a prism is the area of the base times the height. But it turns out that the area of a rectangle is length times width. So length times width times height is the formula we typically end up using for rectangular prisms. All right, so we're going to shift over to your workbook. I want to go over page 180 with you and then get you started on your practice 5 for today. Hopefully you got this page correct. I probably gave you feedback online. You can check the answers for yourself. 2 by 2 by 3, 12 cubic inches. 5 by 2 by 2 gives us a total of 20 cubic inches. You can also count the layers. 14 is interesting because it compares 2 cubes, one that is 2 by 2 by 2, and then we're doubling it to 4 by 4 by 4. See, can you recognize what happens to a cube when you double the length, width, and height? Does it double 8 to 16? No. It goes up by 8 times. 8 times. So it doesn't double, it doesn't quadruple, it octuples. It goes up 8 times as much, which ought to make some sense because it's going up 2 times 2 times 2 times. It's going up 2 cubed times. You know, it's doubling cubed. So 2 cubed is 8. So that should kind of make some sense for you. All right, looking at practice 5, I want to make sure you guys recognize the first page here is not asking you to find the volume. It's just asking you to label the length, which in this first one here would be 12, the width, which would be 12 also, and then the height would be 20. I'll point out to you that this one doesn't necessarily follow that same explanation, and I disagree with those answers based on the shape that it gave you. But as I also mentioned yesterday, it doesn't really make a difference which one you call the length, width, and height, because if we turn the prism on its side or in a different direction, we just end up having different length, width, and height, but it'd still be the same numbers, 12 by 16 by 25. It's on page 182 where you start actually finding volume of these figures. I'm going to do 4 with you. The length of the rectangular prism, we would say, is 12 centimeters side to side. The width is 5, and the height is 9. Volume of a rectangular prism can be found by multiplying the length times the width times the height. If you think about it, you know, if we multiply 5 times 12, then we're finding how many square units there are on the bottom. And so the first layer of cubes here is going to be 60. They're going to be 60 squares, and if you go 1 up, it'll be 60 cubes on the bottom, and there are going to be 9 layers of 60. So that should hopefully resonate with you and make some sense that 60 times 9, which is 5 times 12 times 9, is going to tell you how many total cubic units, cubic centimeters, there are in this prism. And it doesn't matter what order you multiply them in, because multiplication is commutative. You can multiply them in any order and you're going to get the same answer. So a lot of these problems are going to be pretty quick and easy for you. It's just going to almost be multiplying practice, but make sure it makes sense. 3 times 4 is 12, times 2 is 24. Our unit is cubic inches, and yeah, that hopefully should make some sense. 3 by 4 is 12. That's how many squares there are on the bottom face. And so we're going to end up with 2 layers of 12 cubes. And so that's a total of 24. For this one, I'll start with 5 times 8 and get 40. And 40 times 3 is 120 cubic yards, and so on. All right, so continue on to page 183 and 184, which has a couple word problems as well. And that is your practice for today, and I shall see you next time.